Hello and welcome to iBuzz. I'm your host Nasheen Bukhari, bringing you the best and the most exciting entertainment news from Showbiz world. In today's episode, we will be discussing the reviews received by the new movie Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, followed by 3 movie recommendations from the Hollywood classic. First things first, let me quickly take you to the top stories of the day. Mila Jovovich shares thoughts on possibly returning to the Resident Evil franchise. Reynolds, the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, takes down A Quiet Place Part 2 with a mediocre box office start. Foo Fighters play first capacity Madison Square Garden show since COVID. George Clooney, Kerry Washington, Don Cheadle, and more back Los Angeles high school aimed at making Hollywood more inclusive. And Will Smith shares details of his autobiography, Will. And now moving to the top story of the day. Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard nabbed the top spot on box office charts, debuting with $11.6 million from 3,331 U.S. venues over the weekend. The Lionsgate movie, a sequel to the 2017 action comedy The Hitman's Bodyguard, opened on the big screen on Wednesday and has collected $17 million to date. To discuss this further, Linda E. has joined us as an entertainment journalist. Linda, welcome to the show.
Glad to be back.
So, Linda, the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard takes top spot from A Quiet Place 2. Isn't that strange, knowing the fact that film critics were predicting a not very promising future for the movie?
It is strange, but it isn't. I think right now, people are going to the cinema and they just want a bit of escapism. I don't think they want to see things that are too dark, that require them to focus too much. I feel like they just want, a sensation for their eyes. And that's what the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard gives. And they have a very, very strong cast. So although the story, could have been written by a 5-year-old, it does give you a lot to watch.
Right. Also, surprisingly, it has collected $17 million to date. However, the film cost nearly $70 million to produce. So could it face challenges turning a profit in theaters?
Absolutely. And I think, if it was normal times, pre-COVID, it probably would have done a bit better because there would have been more people going naturally anyway. But to be honest, if you've seen the first one, you know what to expect. And I watched the first one, so I didn't go, with any real high expectations. I love the fact that they added Morgan Freeman to the cast, which was, epic. And the little storyline there was a little bit funny. And there were a lot of laughs, LOL moments. But I'm not surprised that this film will face difficulty making a return. I'm actually not surprised at that at all.
Right. And Linda, reviews seem to be pretty off about the sequel, where it has been stated that the hits keep on coming, but the laughs are a bit weaker in this fun and uneven sequel. What are your thoughts on that?
To be honest, I actually think it's a bit funnier than the first one. When I watched it, fair enough, I watched it in a not so typical environment. So it was an actual screening for it, and Selma Hayek herself was there, and there was goodie bags to make me happy.
Right.
But I did find myself laughing a lot more in this one than I did the first time round. So I don't think it's fair to say this one isn't as funny. I actually think it's funnier. It's just, there's nothing to build on. There's no real strong storyline. It's, a bunch of A-listers acting a little bit silly, doing some fights. There's blood and gore and bad language. And that's all there is to this film and to this franchise, if I'm honest.
Right. And according to some viewers, they remembered adding the A-listers, but they forgot to work on the story. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I do agree. It's even when I heard there was going to be a sequel, I was really confused as to what there was going to be a sequel about.
True.
Yes, the hitman has a wife, but I didn't see what they needed to flesh out. I didn't see what story
like how it's going to develop
told.
The story, right?
Why, and they did. They raised the money, they have A-listers behind it, so of course they were gonna get their head through it. And I think this film has done as well as it can do.
Also, critics coming up with their thoughts on the movie like nausea whack, missing the target, loud and violent. But overall, it is a comedy movie that is much needed in times like these where the struggle with COVID lockdowns and virus outbreak is real. So what is your take on that?
Exactly, I completely agree, and that is why people are going to see it, because they need some comic relief. This film does not force you to think about COVID. This film does not force you to think about things that are dark and depressing. It's not a sad film. It really, literally, it's pure entertainment. It's comedy. They are intentionally doing things and saying things to make you laugh. For example, the interaction between Morgan Freeman and Ryan Reynolds' character. Without giving away too many spoilers, Morgan is Ryan's dad. They play on the fact that Morgan is a black man and Ryan is a white man, and they do things intentionally to make you laugh. And that's what people need right now. We need comedic release after the last 18 months the world has been through.
Right. On the other hand, we do have audience that lauded the efforts, and a fan base is built for this sequel.
Yeah, I think the thing about when you have A-listers in a film, there are definitely going to be a fan base. That is the whole reason that A-listers sell movies. That's what it comes down to. I'm going to be incredibly surprised if they do a third one. I don't really know what the third one could be about, but I'm not surprised this film has gained a following. It's Ryan Reynolds. He's everyone's favorite person. Although he often plays the same character, but he brings the action, he brings the suave, he brings the silliness. Samuel L. Jackson is an absolute legend. No one can tell me he isn't. And Salma Hayek is gorgeous. So I'm not surprised there's a fan base for this, but I don't see where else this film can go.
Right. Talking about Ryan Reynolds, the cast is of course uncompromisable, but Ryan Reynolds exclusively seems to be under a bit of a wrath by fans and critics these days. I mean, no matter what he does, it's going kind of against him. And in times like these, coming up with a movie like Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, do you think that this is going to, bring a little, shake in his career, and he needs to be a little careful in future before signing up for any character, just knowing the fact that it's comedy?
Look, personally, I love Ryan Reynolds, but for me, he always plays the same character. He always gives me the same facial expressions, I think Deadpool was a perfect fit for him because, I think that's what his character is like naturally. And I think he constantly plays these characters that are kind of cool, but kind of not, kind of in charge, kind of not, there's, I don't think it's going to do his career any harm. I think he's been long playing these roles. So I think it's a bit too late in his career now for him to swerve and maybe go for something a bit more serious or a bit more gritty. This is what has made him Ryan Reynolds. And I don't think there's any point in him trying to change.
Right, and of course the sequel always gets to be better than the prior, but looks like the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard met with a slightly different attitude this time. So comparatively, how would you differ between the two parts of this movie?
You know what, the first one, it wasn't as funny. That's the one thing I'd say. It wasn't as funny, but it was more of a unique storyline because, yes, we've all heard of hitmen and, a hitman's bodyguard. Like, why would a hitman need a bodyguard? So it was kind of interesting to see how that played out and how that tied into like a grander scheme of a bad guy. With this one, it was funnier. Yes, the second one is definitely funnier, but the storyline, I just think it was a bit too OTT, especially with this bad guy. He seems very elaborate and very much that storybook. I'm a bad guy. So I think they overdid it with this one. That's how I would compare the two, but it is funnier, if that makes sense.
Right. And Linda, with so many critical reviews, the movie still managed to replace A Quiet Place 2, which means either it's not that bad after all, or do you think there is some other reason to that?
I think there's a combination of reasons for it. I think A Quiet Place 2, which I've not seen yet, I have seen the first one, and the first one was good. I feel as though I didn't even know when it came out in the cinema, and I am, huge into movies. And I think perhaps there wasn't as much publicity around it, around the release. I'm not sure how long it's been out for. It might have been out for too long, and now people are bored. I feel as though people don't necessarily want to watch something too serious now as well. The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard is given an alternative, A-list movie for people to go and watch and to not think too seriously about, to have a bit of escapism. They did incredible promotion for it as well. And I keep saying it is a funny film. It's not gonna, make you go away and think of, the main protagonist, and it's not gonna give you anything like that. It will make you LOL. You will see some cool fight scenes, and I think right now people just need to, some mindless fun, which it kind of is.
Right. And Alinda, another addition to the movie, Antonio Banderas. While watching the movie, what difference did you feel? I mean, like talking about A-listers, he was one of them. So do you think that his addition brought a little bit of difference for the audience to feel?
Unfortunately, no. He is who I was referring to when I said I think they went a bit OTT, because he is the main bad guy, and I just did not get it. He was a one-dimensional character. There was literally nothing to him apart from this ridiculous blonde wig.
But that was an unnecessary addition, right?
It was an unnecessary addition. I liked the twist between Morgan Freeman. I thought Morgan Freeman's character was actually quite a good character in store, and it was a nice change of dynamic. And but Antonio Banderas, they could have, calm down a bit with him and his portrayal of the villain.
Right. And Linda, do you think, keeping in mind the response that the movie received, there should be another sequel, or this has to be considered a wind-up?
I want to say this should be considered a wind-up, but I won't be. I know I said I'd be surprised if there was a third one, but just knowing how these movie studios work, if it does turn a return, eventually they probably will give us a third and final chapter. I don't think they need to. They should kind of leave it here, but the way they ended the story, you could understand why something came next, a third and final chapter, but I think they should leave it here.
Right. Linda, thank you very much indeed. Pleasure being with you today.
Thank you so much.
That was Linda E. with her thoughts on the movie Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. And now let's move to other story details of the day. After spending 15 years starring in the Resident Evil films, Mila Jovovich will not be appearing in this year's newest installment. For many fans, it may be hard to imagine the popular horror movie franchise without the actress, regardless of how cool the cast of Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City may be. In an interview, she shared that there does not seem to be a downside. What Mila Jovovich is referring to is the upcoming Netflix project, and while it doesn't sound like she's on board yet, her enthusiasm definitely provides a bit of hope for future Alice appearances. The Foo Fighters rocked Madison Square Garden on Sunday night with unexpected guest Dave Chappelle. It was the Garden's first concert since the coronavirus pandemic shuttered venues in New York City in March 2020. The band and frontman Dave Grohl kicked off the show with their song Times Like These with cheers from the crowd. They launched into The Pretender. The show was for a vaccinated audience only and was the first 100% capacity concert in a New York arena since the start of the pandemic. George Clooney, Kerry Washington, Don Cheadle, and more stars hope to make Hollywood more inclusive by exposing students to entertainment industry jobs during high school. The industry veterans are backing a magnet program in partnership with the Los Angeles Unified School District, where curriculum will center around film and television production. The Academy will provide education and practical training in the arts and sciences of filmmaking to marginalized community, according to Los Angeles Unified School District. Will Smith is excited for us to read his memoir. The superstar put up a few posts over the weekend on his verified Instagram account regarding his forthcoming autobiography titled Will. In one, Smith used a filter to give him a Disney character-style face, noting that it was weird to talk about his first book. The book is scheduled for release on November 9th. That is it from Newsroom. We will be right back after a quick short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In this segment, we will be recommending you the 3 Hollywood classic movies: Green Miles, What Dreams May Come, A Beautiful Mind. For discussion, we are joined by our favorite film critic, Matt Capon. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, first movie that we have chosen to discuss today is Green Miles. Tom Cruise star Green Miles is the kind of a movie that actually sends shivers down your spine.
What else would you expect from a story based on a Stephen King novel? It's a really touching, heartfelt, and incredibly powerful film, and it's career-defining. It really brought Michael Clarke Duncan into the public eye with his incredible portrayal of John Coffey, and wow, just wow, what a film. I can't speak highly enough of it.
Yeah, and amazing cast like Michael Clarke, Sam Rockwell, Patricia Clarkson. This is something that adds more to the flavor.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fantastic ensemble, and everyone has their moment on screen. Everyone delivers to their absolute highest of their ability. And I can watch this film time and time again because it's both tender with how John Coffey's story as this gentle giant is portrayed, taking the ominous walk up the Green Mile, but also how Tom Hanks's character really deals with the conflict that his job creates and the powers behind Michael Clarke Duncan's character. It's an absolute recommended watch, without a doubt.
Right, and Matt, what is your take on the very dramatic ending that leaves the viewers in a mini trauma when they find out that, okay, he had the powers to control, to change the situation, but then, you know, under what circumstances he could not do that. So what is your take on the very dramatic end?
It offers a bit of magic with a dark edge to it, which is what you would come to expect from a Stephen King novel. It almost jolts you at the end, where you realise actually there was something to it all. There was a power, there was a substance to John Coffey's story, and it really gives a nice sense of closure to Tom Hanks's overall story within the film. For me, I think the ending is incredibly good, and Frank Darabont, the director, does a fantastic job on it.
Right. And now coming to the 1998 What Dreams May Come, a fantastic movie, a masterpiece by Robin Williams.
Very much this film could be best described as a watercolor. It is full of colors, tones, textures, and it was very much ahead of its time with its portrayal of the circumstances that sit behind suicide and death. And Robin Williams was really coming into his own as a serious actor, moving away from the comedic roots that really defined his career. But I think also you've got quite a good cast around him as well. Cuba Gooding Jr. is incredibly good as Albert, and I think it's one of those films that would surprise people because it's actually aged very, very well.
Yes. And such a mind-bending story that, you know, keeps you indulged in the movie. I mean, it is a very long movie, but then you keep on watching it to find out what happened. I mean, the way the story develops, it's very interesting.
Oh, entirely. And without giving away any spoilers, but the twist at the start sets the tone for the journey that Robin Williams goes on through the film, and the idea of consequences in life coming to the fore in death, and how you cope with the struggles that life throws in front of you. It wasn't without controversy when it was launched, when it hit screens, and there is one notable line in the film that Cuba Gooding Jr. says when asked, because there's one notable character that isn't in the film, and that's God. And when asked where God is, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character Albert says, "Oh, he's up there somewhere shouting that he loves us." That is a beautifully delivered line, and one of my favorites in the overall piece.
Exactly. And Matt, talking about the setting of the movie, I mean, it's very captivating throughout. I mean, the two worlds were not mixed. The way they were set, the way they were shown, especially, you know, the life after. I mean, it's like we said, that it's way ahead of its time. The CGI that was used in this movie, it was fantastic. I mean, I would really love you to talk about the settings of the movie.
Well, it's often compared to Dante's Inferno. You have these really broad golden colours that then descend very, very quickly into dark, dank, foreboding surroundings when you move quite literally from heaven into hell. And it really, for its time, it really challenged the audience, because we'd never seen visuals like this on screen before. And when you
the transition is brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
But unfortunately, the movie could not gain much fame, the kind of fame that it deserved.
No, it didn't. But when you look at the films that were coming out at the time, it was really quite literally ahead of its time. I think if it had been released maybe 10 years later, it would have received much more critical acclaim.
Most probably. So now, coming to our last but not the least, A Beautiful Mind. This movie, what I think is Jennifer Connelly seems to be the real hero. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree. This is this is a textbook Ron Howard film. It really benefits from Ron Howard's deft touch behind the camera. But Jennifer Connelly's character really does carry it. There is a human side to her, alongside Russell Crowe, starring as John Nash. But you really do understand the strength and the power that Jennifer Connelly has to support John through his struggles with schizophrenia, which is a very taboo subject to tackle in a film like this.
Of course, the topic that they came up with, or the way the movie starts, you know, a student having a crush on her teacher, and then, you know, them getting married, it wasn't something very usual or regular to handle.
No, not at all. As I said, very taboo in many different respects. But it's given a sense of believability by the work of Jennifer Connelly and Russell Crowe. It could very easily descend into farce, but it doesn't, and I think that's one of its strengths. Right,
and Crowe brings the character to life by sidestepping sensationalism and building with small behavioral details.
Yes, he has that down pat. He's very, very good at showing you the intricacies of struggle, of reconciling with what is and what is not real. In many respects, quite similar to What Dreams May Come, but he provides it in a much more real-world setting, understanding what is going on around him versus what his mind is playing tricks on.
Right, and Matt, the story seems very much relatable, of a man whose mind was of enormous service to humanity while at the same time betrayed him with frightening delusions. I mean, it has a lot to discuss about one's mental health, a normal human being's mental health, which is, again, like we have already discussed, that it's not something regular or usual that we see on screen.
Yes, it very much, I think that's a running theme throughout the film, is you have someone whose mind was his power, was his strength, and delivered such broad good to the wider world. But when you understand that actually that tool of such fantastic value is beginning to fail you, the conflict that brings inside of you, that you Can you trust yourself? Can you trust yourself anymore? That's really one of the core themes of the film.
And Matt, of all these three movies, which one is your favorite and why?
An incredibly difficult question, as all three of them are fantastic films to sit down, watch, and enjoy. But I'd have to say it would be The Green Mile, because just the strength of the story, the cast, Michael Clarke Duncan carries the film with such heart, and it's unexpectedly so. But it would be The Green Mile by a whisker.
Right, Matt. Great discussion. Thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Thanks a lot for your time.
That was Matt Capon with 3 of his top recommendations from Hollywood classics. And that is it from today's episode. We hope you liked it. Don't forget to share your feedback on the social media link mentioned down below. We'll see you next time with some more content. Until then, take care and goodbye.